begin. Namaskar. We have been doing this spiritual paradigm for the last 6 or 7 sessions. And in the last session, we have addressed the Jnana Kanda of the Vedas. Jnana Kanda is the last part of the Vedas, it is said. Though physically it is not the last part, it is spread all over the place and across several Vedas. It is said that there were something like 1118 Upanishads which describe the Jnana Kanda. It is the philosophy of the Vedas, and we try to understand what the Upanishads collectively say. We will continue that session today. In the last session, we did an introduction and we defined the meaning of Brahma, which is the substratum of creation and goes beyond. Then the creation or the Maya, also known as Prakriti, also known as Shakti. Then we started what is the meaning of spirituality, Paravidya. This is what we did in the last session. And today we will do 2 more subsections. One is about the imperativeness of realization. Nanya Pantha, it says. The Vedas say Nanya Pantha. This journey of life will not end until you realize Brahma Jnana. That is, realize Brahman. If you don't realize, you will continue in the cycle of samsara. This is the considered view of the Vedas, and we will see the details of that. And the next session will be what is the meaning of realization. What is Anubhuti? Anubhuti would mean that you realize that you are Brahman. Because everything is Brahman. You and me and everything else also is Brahman. But we are prevented from knowing it by Ajnana. So if you shed the ignorance, you realize what you are. And that is why the term used is realization. And it will lead to liberation. Liberation from the cycle of samsara. That is the content of the second subsection today. And having realized, it will tell you that that is the end. The end happens to be that you become Brahman. You are unified with Brahman. Or you are aware that you are unified with Brahman. So that is the content of the session today. First we'll take Nanya Pantha. That is, there is no escape from realization. The Upanishads are spread all over the Vedas, obviously written at various instants of time. That is, over a long period of time, maybe thousands of years, written by many different rishis. But what is very special about the Veda is that there is a remarkable convergence in what the various Upanishads say. I have not read all the Upanishads, but I have learnt about 12 Upanishads. But all the 12 Upanishads are unanimous in certain points. When I say certain points, which constitute the thesis of the Jnana Kanda, thesis of the Veda. We call this as the paradigm of the Vedas, Vedic paradigm. And the points of this thesis are listed here. I will take some time to review them. The 3 of these points we have done in the last session, and 3 more points we will do today. The first point is that the creation is a manifestation of divine. creation in its entirety is a manifestation of the divine. Entire creation is divine. This is the fundamental statement of Vedanta. You can see it in Purusha Sukta, you can see it in Narayana Sukta, you can see it in Ishavasya Upanishad, in Chandogya Upanishad, in Brahadaranyaka Upanishad, any number of Upanishads you take, somewhere or the other this point is mentioned with great emphasis. The quote that you see here, we have discussed in the last session. This is from the Purusha Sukta. It says, Padosya Vishwa Bhutani, Tripadasya Amritam Divi. What it means is that the entire creation is only a fraction. It says Pada means 1/4 of Brahman, 3/4 is outside creation. Similar statements are there. Atyatishtat dashangulam. Sabhumim Vishwato Vrutva Atyatishtat dashangulam. The entire creation, including the whole of earth and the world, and Brahman extends beyond that in 10 different directions. So creation is the manifestation of Brahman, yes, but Brahman is beyond that manifestation as well. So we really do not know Brahman. This is the fundamental statement of Vedanta. The second point is that this Brahman is a substratum of creation, but he is invisible. Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samavrita. Why he is not visible? Krishna says he is not visible because he is covered by Maya. Maya means Prakriti. The creation is ever changing Prakriti. It is ever changing. Nothing in creation is stable in time. If you plant a sapling, the sapling keeps on growing. Either it keeps on growing or it will decay, but it will never remain stable. It is true of humans, it is true of animals, it is true of plants, it is true of inanimate objects as well. Kalo sarva bhakshaka. This time consumes everything, changes everything, and it is a hallmark of creation that it is ever changing. But the hallmark of Brahman is that it is never changing. It is never changing. It is a substratum of creation. It supports the creation. It pervades the creation. But Brahman is unchanging. But the unchanging Brahman is not visible for the Jiva. Jiva means we all. It is not visible. He is there, but he is not visible. Naham prakasha sarvasya yoga maya samavrita. If creation has to keep changing, it needs a substratum. If a river is flowing, you can see the water flow, especially if it is flooding, you will see the great power of the water flowing. But if you go to the depth of the water, at one level, that is the bottom, at the river bed is unchanging, unmoving. Only the water is moving. In order to support the moving water, you need an unchanging bed. If a fan is revolving, it needs a spindle, a shaft around which it rotates. The spindle is not rotating. The axle of the car is not rotating, but the wheel is rotating. So the ever-changing Maya, Prakriti, is supported by a never-changing Brahman, but Brahman is invisible because it is covered by the changing Maya. The Maya is said to be Trigunatmika. It comprises of the three gunas. Everything in Maya comprises of three gunas, a combination of three gunas, I would say. It is not only one guna, but all the three gunas will be there. Their combination will be there. In various proportions it will be there. This is one of the differentiator from one being to another being, from one plant to another plant, or from one reality to another reality. This is the hallmark of Maya. The proportion is different. No two individuals are alike. So it is Trigunatmika, and Brahman is above the Trigunas. Nirguna. It is said to be Nirguna. He is above the Triguna. The Trigunas have come from Brahman, but Brahman is unaffected. This Trigunatmika Maya has two attributes or two features. One is called Avarana, another is called Vikshepa. Avarana means that is something covers, something conceals. If I have a statue at the corner of my room, I can put a cloth over that, it covers it. If it covers, I am not able to identify the features of the statue. That is one. Another is that it projects it as something else. It is actually a statue, but concealed by a cloth, but one can mistake it for a ghost. The first one, Avarana, is called Asambhavana. You are the reality. Different. One is Avarana, another is Vikshepa. Maya keeps doing this trick all over the place. It certainly does it for Brahman. Brahman is hidden, and you is hidden in such a way that you can pass through your entire life, maybe many lives, without ever bothering to check whether such a thing exists or not. Even if people tell you to say that. A Jijnasu's position is that he believes that something is there. He knows that it is concealed, and he wants to know what the reality is. Viparita Sambhavana people are those who feel that it is really Bankam. Karl Marx did that. Charvaka did that. He said all this is Bankam. So he not only does not accept but thinks that it is something else altogether. Marxism says the reality of the universe is that it is a materialistic reality. His theory of communism is called scientific communism, dialecticism, or materialist philosophy, it is called. So he believes that whatever the manifestation that has happened in the creation, like men were able to think, who have a mind, he says mind is a manifestation of matter. So it is Viparita Sambhavana. It is not only covered, but then projected as something else. So the ever-changing Maya conceals the never-changing Brahman. That is the second aspect of Vedanta. The third point is that all the beings in creation are ever in a quest. They keep searching. All of us are party to this. We keep searching. Whether we admit or not, internally there is a motivation. There is a motivation to search, and we keep searching in life. We may have desires, but it is in fact a search. And all our motivations, aspirations, the desires can be categorized under three heads. The three heads, of course, you can categorize it in many ways, but I am categorizing into three heads because I want to relate it to Vedanta. The three heads are, one is called security, another is called peace, the third thing is happiness. What do we seek in life? We seek security, we seek peace of mind, and we seek happiness. Vedanta admits these, this quest, the search for security, peace, and happiness as bona fide. It is genuine. But it is actually a spiritual quest, though one may not be aware that it is a spiritual quest. He says that unconsciously or consciously, one is looking for the spiritual substratum of this universe, this life, or one is in search of Brahman. And the Brahman is, the nature of Brahman is said to be Satchidananda. Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Sat means it is a Shashwata Adhisthana. It is an unchanging reality as the substratum of creation. That is called Sat. It never changes, never changes. Creation ever changes. As time passes, you will notice changes, but Brahman never changes, and therefore there is no sense of time in Brahman. He is called Akala. Akala. He is beyond time. The word Akala means he can never be subject to any kind of change. So there are several words we use to indicate Brahman. Akala, Avyaya, Akshara, Avinashi, Brahman has no sense of time. Unless something changes, there is no time. So Sat, unchanging reality, is the reflection of this unchanging reality in our life, in our perception, in our consciousness, comes to be an aspiration for seeking security. What does security really mean? We can think of financial security, or we can think of emotional security. The Veda says, Prajaya Dhanena. Dhana means wealth. I need to continue my lifestyle as it is. I have acquired a particular status, I want to continue it even after retirement. So I need security. So I need bank balance, I need PPF, I need a house. All these are aspirations from security from the financial point of view. But it is not merely financial. For example, our family. Family is a great security. Great security. Most of us would not exchange our family for anything in the world. It is something which is very precious for us. The aspiration comes from the continued stability of our living. Children, for example, I need to have children because one of the deeper aspiration is that I want to continue my life. I know that my life is limited, but my lineage should continue. So children will carry this forward. Therefore, it is a very genuine aspiration that lineage continues. So is reputation. Many times we say that I want to contribute something of lasting value. Why lasting value? That even after I am gone, people should remember this contribution. People should use this contribution. This is a very genuine aspiration because it's an aspiration for Amritatva, a continuous continuity that is an unchanging reality. Its reflection manifests in us in the form of an aspiration for a continuity, which is called Amritatva. The second aspect of Brahman is Chit. Chit means Jnanam. Jnanam is knowledge. Knowledge is peace. In the higher sense, it is certainly that the Gita says, Nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitra meha vidyate. Pavitra means ripple free, turbulence free. That is called pavitra, and nothing like knowledge to do that. Jnanam labdva param shanti, says the Bhagavad Gita. It is in the spiritual sense, but in the material sense also, knowledge is peace. If you observe closely, if many times we pass through this, of course, all of us are experienced for several decades, we have seen life, and we experience this kind of things in relationships. Any relationship sustains because of trust. I would say any relationship. That trust between husband and wife, father or son, boss and employee, or whatever the relationship, initially there is no trust factor. We come across, we talk, we shake hands, and we make acquaintance. But over a period of time, we develop friendship, and the friendship sustains only because of trust. If a trust is betrayed, that is a great vacuum created, and it is a very distressing experience. When such a thing happens, there is a knot in the mind, a question which is not resolved. A mental problem is something that an experience is unresolved, it becomes a mental problem. There is an experience, but the meaning of that experience I am not able to derive. So it gets stuck in the mind. An unresolved problem is a psychological knot. You go to a counselor, and what does the counselor do? He will ask you several questions. Several questions. And he will try to dig out what is in your mind and why this problem is not resolved, why this experience is not resolved. And he will make you see the light. When you see the light, it gets resolved. Many times phobias. Phobias means unexplained problems. We do not know why it happens. Many people have phobia. See, they cannot go to a swimming pool and jump into the pool. They are afraid of water. There are many people who cannot stay in an elevated building. There are people who cannot fly in the air. I mean, by the aeroplane. These are phobias. They are frightened. They don't know why. There is a gentleman counselor by name Brian Weiss. We have discussed his name earlier also. Brian Weiss, who lives in Florida, a practicing psychiatrist. He has written several books listing or explaining his case studies. And his method is called regression therapy. He's a regression therapist, he says. What does he do? If there is a phobia which the candidate or the client is unable to explain the cause of that, then he puts the client on a hypnotic sleep and then approaches directly his subconscious and asks several questions and seeks answers to the problem from the subconscious. In this process, he takes the candidate a little backward in time. Maybe in the childhood, there is some experience which is unresolved. So he takes you back and back till the childhood and until he comes to know what is the cause of the problem. And then he explains it to the client when he comes awake, after he awakens. That was his method. But once, some years ago, once he stumbled upon the candidate, taken the client back to the childhood, back to his early childhood, that is 1 year, 2 year time, then he suddenly found that the candidate has gone to the previous life. He started talking in a language which is not understandable. in the ordinary sense of the context. So he realized that it is a previous lifetime. So he dug deeper into that and eventually found the cause of the phobia in the present life occurring sometime in the past life. And when the client awakens, whole thing is taped and it is replayed to the client in his conscious state and explained. When the person realizes this is the cause, the problem gets resolved. What I'm trying to point out is that knowledge is peace. Knowledge is peace. In a spiritual sense, knowledge is certainly peace, because once you have a spiritual realization, everything is Brahman, there is no scope for problems at all. So therefore, nahi jnanena sadrisham pavitramiha vidyate. So that is the second aspect of our search. So we are looking for solutions, looking for peace of mind, which is actually a shadow of a spiritual quest. And the third aspect is that Ananda. Ananda is translated as bliss, but Ananda, according to Vedanta, is nothing but Ananta. Ananta means expansiveness. Ananta can have two meanings. One is in the time scale, Anadi and Ananta, and another is in the sense of the space. It is expansiveness. Bliss is nothing but expansiveness. Yo vai bhuma tad sukham, says the Veda. Yo vai bhuma. Bhuma means Brahman. Yo vai bhuma tad sukham. Na alpe sukhamasti. Limited is not bliss. Expansiveness, infinite, is bliss. So Ananda and Ananta are one and the same. And it says, Anando Brahmeti Vijanat. Know that Ananda is Brahman. So Sat, Chit, Ananda is Brahman, his features. A spiritual seeker is one who is consciously searching for that. If he is conscious, such as our sannyasis, who have taken a vow to pursue Brahman throughout their life, in which case they may not do any of these material, mundane searches. They may not look for security. They may not look for ordinary peace. They may not look for the continuity, for the expansion. See, in the material sense, this aspiration for Ananta, that is expansion, happens in the form of, we seek to expand. We organize parties for the sake of happiness. We get married for the sake of happiness. It is actually expansion. I am alone, but I want to become more. Ekoham bahusyam. I am alone, but I want to be more. That's why I get married. So it is a very genuine aspiration. A little later, children are born, the family gets settled. So my identity expands to cover the family. And many people, not normal people, but many exceptional people, they identify themselves with the whole society. Social workers, full-time workers. Because they find their identity in the society. It is expanded, it identifies with the country, with the society. And this is a very bona fide and genuine growth. It is a spiritual growth. A soldier, see, he takes an enormous risk because he identifies himself with the whole society. Sri Aurobindo was asked, because in our tradition, this is a death in the war front. When I say war, it is a dharmic war. Death for the sake of a war, for the sake of dharma, is considered to be very noble. One of the Smritis says, Dvavimau Purushau Loke, Surya Mandala Bhedinau, Parivrat Yoga Yuktascha, Rane Chadi Mukhehata. Two people are exceptional. They split the Surya Mandala and go to the higher lokas. Surya Mandala Bhedinau. They reach the higher loka. Who are the two? One of them is Parivrat Yoga Yuktascha, a sannyasi who has accepted the whole universe as his home. Another is the one who dies in the war. Yoga Yuktascha, Rane Chabhi Mukhe Hataha. When Sri Aurobindo was asked, why is this statement, Rane Chabhi Mukhe, why is he compared with the sannyasi? He said, a Brahmajnani identifies himself with the whole of creation, but a soldier reaches that in a moment. It is an explosion. He accepts death, stares death in the face, and it is the highest, he is actually transcending Maya. He crosses Maya. Fear of death has been conquered. And therefore, it is a great spiritual expansion that happens at the time of war, when a soldier fights. And you would notice this, a soldier who participated in the war, in any war, if you meet him, he is a very mature person. Because the experience of facing the death in the front, staring into him, is a great spiritual experience. Okay, so that is becoming Ananta, becoming expansiveness, which is nothing but Ananda. Ananda is Brahman. Now the fourth point is, the quest ends when the individual jiva realizes Brahman. We call it Sakshi, we call it, this realization is called moksha. Without this realization, the journey doesn't end. Veda is very emphatic on this. By knowing Brahman, the journey ends. But without knowing it, it doesn't end. It says, Jnatvatam Mrityumatyeti. You cross the creation, that is Mrityumatyeti, death. Nanya Pantha Vimuktai. Unless you cross this world, the Maya, unless you realize, there is no end for this journey. But knowing it ends this journey. In fact, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, he says that you can worship any deity. Any deity you can worship, any deity of your choice you can worship. But all deities are within the Maya. You call it Ganesha, you call it Shiva, you call it Durga. All these things are within the Maya. And each of these deity is a special manifestation, has special attributes. For example, Ganesha is Vinayaka. He is Vigna Karaka, Vigna Vinayaka, Vigna Nashaka. Likewise, various deities have special features. And there you can accept any deity and worship, and you will get what you seek from that particular deity. Especially those things for which it is known. In Udupi, there is a temple called Santana Gopala Krishna Devasthana. People who seek progeny, children, they go and pray there. And it is a special feature of this God, this deity, that he will grant children. Likewise, different deities have different features, different specialities, and even the mode of worshipping are different. I belong to a clan which follows Shankara's philosophy, and Shankaracharya, he has given 5 deities for us to worship. In my house, all the 5 deities are worshipped. Ganesha, Durga, Shiva, Surya, and Vishnu. All these 5 deities we worship. Worshipping would require several aspects. It requires namaskara, it requires archana, it requires naivedya, it requires stotra. Yeah, and that is archana. Actually. So there are 5 different aspects are there, but each deity, one thing is special. It is special, all right, and that is how you worship, so that the deity is propitiated, and you seek boons, you get those boons. Krishna says you will do that, but essentially it is I who manifest in the form of deities, and I give you this. Aham hi sarva yajnanam bhokta cha prabhureva cha, he says. But then he says, but if you want to come to me, you can worship me as Krishna, as Gopala Krishna, you can worship and seek children, I give you children. But to reach me as Brahman, that is my higher nature, Mama Bhuta Maheshwara. To seek me as Brahman, you need to know me. He says, Natumam abhijananti tattvena, tattvenatas chavantite. If you don't know me, you will continue in the same cycle of samsara. Ashraddhadana purushat dharmasyasya parantapaha. Aprapya mam nivartante mrityu samsara vatmani. If you don't have faith in me as Brahman and you don't seek me as knowledge, then you will not get knowledge. But you will continue. You ask other things, I'll give you other things. But if you want me, the Brahman, Brahmano hi pratisthaham, amrutasya avyayasya cha. If you want me, then you should know me. So the way it comes from the Vedas, Veda says, unless you realize, this journey doesn't end. Jnatvatam mrityumatyeti nanya pantha vimuktaye. Shvetashvatara Upanishad says, Vedaha metam purusham mahantam. Aditya varnam tamasaparastha. I have seen the Purusha who is, who glows like the sun in the sky. Aditya varnam purusham mahantam. Tadeva viditvam ati mrityumeti. By knowing him alone, ati mrityumeti, one crosses death. That means samsara. Nanya pantha vidyate ayanaya. So unless you realize there is no escape from the samsara, that is the 4th point. The 5th point is that this realization is achieved through an instrument of Dhi Shakti. It is also known as Mahadhi. It is also known as Mahabuddhi. Dhi is the higher level of the intellect. Ordinarily, we have several levels, several layers of existence. We have koshas, the 5 koshas we have. 5 layers of existence, 5 koshas. It is Indriya, Karmendriya, Jnanendriya, Prana, Mana, and Buddhi. These are the 5 levels. But Krishna says, Indriyani Paranyahu. From Karmendriya, Jnanendriya is subtler. Subtle means something which has a larger reach. Indriyani Paranyahu. Karmendriya Jnanendriya is superior to Karmendriya. From Karmendriya, it is Manas is superior. Indriyani Paranyahu, Indriyebhya Param Manaha. Manasastu Parabuddhi. But yo buddhe paratastu saha. But this reality, the Atman, is superior even to the intellect. Evam buddhe param buddha. But you need to know that. Something that is superior, supreme, subtler, you need to know that. And in order to know that, you have to expand your mind further. Intellect is the most subtlest part of our being. Mind can visit something which is already stored in the memory, but intellect can take you beyond, from the known to the unknown. So it is subtler, it is explorative. But ordinary intellect, the logic, the rational intellect is not sufficient to perceive Brahman, which is subtler than our intellect. So all the Veda says it is achintyoyam. It cannot be grasped. Intellect cannot describe it. Language cannot describe it, because language is a product of the intellect. Anirvachaniyam, achintyoyam. Therefore, you need to develop another instrument which is of a subtler nature, about which we really do not know, and that is where the difficulty lies. That is termed as Dhi, Mahadhi, or Mahabuddhi. It is the door which opens Brahman. I would not call it an instrument as such, but it is a door, or it is a key to a door. This is, the Veda is very emphatic. I'll show you the quotations from various Upanishads where it is said. One of them says, Nityam Vibhum Sarvagatam Susukshmam Tad Avyayam Yad Bhuta Yonim. All descriptions of Brahman. Nitya is eternal. Vibhu is something that has manifested as a multitude. One has become many, that is called Vibhu. Sarvagatam, it pervades everything. Susukshmam, it is subtler than everything that we know. Tad avyayam, it cannot be destroyed. It doesn't change. Yad bhuta yonim, it keeps the entire creation in its womb. That can be seen by the Dhi Shakti. Paripashyanti Dhira. Pashyanti means seen. But here it is not seeing through the ordinary eye, it is seeing through the Dhi Shakti, and therefore the word used is Paripashyanti Dhira. And unless you develop that, you will not be able to see it. That is the message. And the last point is that once you know, once you realize, what is realization? Shedding the ignorance is realization. If you shed the ignorance, you know that you are Brahman, then you become Brahman. There is no distinction between the individual and Brahman. So the Veda says, Brahma Veda Brahmaiva Bhavati. Param Brahma Veda Brahmaiva Bhavati. The one who knows Brahman is Brahman. These 6 points constitute what is known as Brahma Vidya. It can also be called as Advaita Vedanta. And there is a methodology that is described. How do you evolve your Dhi Shakti? The Gayatri mantra is meant for evolution of Dhi Shakti. It is a prayer for evolution of Dhi Shakti. And Sri Krishna endorses it, saying, Gayatri Chandasamaham. I am Gayatri among the whole Vedas. It is the most important mantra of the Vedas. So that is the purpose of the Veda. This is called Brahma Vidya. Now I'll show you some examples of this. Yeah. Brahma Lakshanam. Half the time we describe Brahman as something which is not creation. He is Akala, Avyaya, Akshara, Avinashi. These words are used, which means it is a negative definition. What is not creation is Brahman. But Brahman has a positive definition. Satya Chit Ananda, we have already described this. It is the most commonly used description. The very correct definition is Satchidananda. I mean, it's a complete definition, not only correct, but complete definition is Satchidananda. Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma, which means nothing but Satchidananda. Satyam is Sat, Jnanam is Chit, Anantam is Ananda. And therefore, it is exactly the same as this. The Taittiriya Upanishad says, Satyam Jnanam Anantam Brahma. Anando Brahmeti Vijanat. At another place, the Taittiriya Upanishad says, Anandam is Anantam, Anantam is Brahman. Shantam Shivam Advaitam Brahma. I presently show you. Mandukya Upanishad says, Shantam, serene, Shivam, Mangalakaraka, that is auspicious, Advaitam, one without a second, is Brahman. Then this is Chandogya Upanishad says, Yovai Bhuma Tat Sukham. The large, the infinite is bliss. Na alpe sukhamasti. The small is not beautiful. There is a dictum saying small is beautiful, but the Vedanta talks in terms of the there. Small means finite. Finite means creation. It is not sukham. Na alpe sukhamasti. Bhuma sizes. The large, infinite. Yeah. Says Bhagavan. The infinite is bliss, but the finite is not bliss. The infinite alone is bliss, he emphasizes. Therefore, one should strive to know the infinite. And the student responds, Bhagavan, I wish to know the infinite. This is Taittiriya Upanishad, where it says, Anando Brahmeti Vijanat. He realized that Ananda is Brahman. Anandadhyaya, Anandadhyeva, Khilvamani Bhutani Jayante. From Ananda alone are the creatures born, and being born, they live in Ananda, and to Ananda they return, says the Taittiriya Upanishad. This shloka is taken from this mantra, sorry. In Veda it is called mantra. This mantra is taken from the Mandukya Upanishad. Mandukya Upanishad is one of the very important Upanishads. Also, the shortest Upanishad. It contains only 12 shlokas. And the seventh mantra of this Upanishad is considered to be one of the most significant mantras in the whole of Jnanakanda. See how poetically and how beautifully it expounds. He says, he checks out the three states of the being. He starts by saying, Prajna, na ubhayata prajna, na prajnana ghanam, na prajnam, na prajnam. If you remember, we have discussed these three states. I'll show you the picture of that. Yes. Yeah, this is the picture of the being, the structure of the being, where there are three layers, three bodies. Sthula Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and Karana Sharira. There are 5 koshas, 3 koshas, the middle 3 koshas together is called Sukshma Sharira. And the Chidabhasa Chaitanya, which is the reflection of Sakshi, reflection of the Atman, which gives you an eye sense. Our eye sense is around the Chidabhasa Chaitanya. It is not around Sakshi. It is on Chidabhasa Chaitanya, which covers all the 5 koshas or all the 3 shariras. And cyclically it moves, in a cycle it moves. See, during the waking hours, it covers all the three shariras. Karana Sharira, Sukshma Sharira, and Stula Sharira. But when you go to sleep, first it covers only two shariras, the Sukshma Sharira and Karana Sharira. Later on in deep sleep, it withdraws entirely into the Karana Sharira. That is called Sushupti. Jagrita, Swapna, Sushupti. This Upanishad says, Nanta prajna na bahi prajna. Anta prajna means when in the dream state. He's saying my prajna, that is my Chidabhasa Chaitanya, in the dream state, he calls it anta prajna, na bahi prajna. Bahi prajna means waking state. Nanta prajna, na bahi prajna. Na ubhayata prajna. It is nothing in between. It is not something in between. Na prajnana ghanam, not even deep sleep. And then he says, na prajnam, na aprajnam. It is neither prajna nor the absence of prajna. It is something else. What is that something else? That is the Sakshi. Sakshi is present in the being all the time, without exception. Without exception. It is present all the time, and that is called consciousness. But we are not aware of that presence. This Veda says, this Upanishad says, you know that. You know that. So he's saying, Nanta prajna na bhi prajna, na ubhayata prajna, na prajna na ghanam, na prajnam, na prajnam. And then he describes what is that Sakshi. Sakshi says, Adrishtam, Avyavaharyam, Agrahyam, Alakshanam, Achintyam, Avyapadeshyam, Ekatma Pratyaya Saram. Prapanchopashamam Shantam Shivam Advaitam Chaturtham Manyante Sa Atma Savidneya. I split it here. The Sakshi is Adrishtam. It is beyond sensory perception. Avyavaharyam. You can't draw into transactions, beyond transactions. Agrahyam, beyond intellectual grasp. Alakshanam, beyond attributes. Achintyam, beyond thoughts, beyond conception. Avyapadeshyam, beyond description. You can't describe it using language. Ekatma Pratyaya Saram. It is unbroken self-awareness as Sakshi. The Sakshi is aware. It is only the reflection who is not aware. It is the Jiva who is not aware. But the Sakshi is aware. Ekatma Pratyaya Saram. It is the essential of unbroken self-awareness. The essence of that which is Sakshi. Prapanchopashamam. It means the dissolution of creation. When the person withdraws into Brahman, the world doesn't exist for him. The other day I was listening to Sadhguru, who said when he first realized in somewhere in Mysore, in Chamundi Betta, he sat under a tree and for several days he lost awareness of the outer world. And when he awoke, it must have about 12-13 days. When he awoke, there was a crowd of people who were prostrating before him, complimenting him and treating him as a yogi and all that. But when you are in the samadhi, the outer world dissolves. It doesn't exist. You see only Brahman everywhere. That is called Prapanchopashama. Shantam, Shivam, Advaitam. Chaturtham Manyante. The three states, in the three states are meant for the prajna. But Sakshi says he is beyond the three states. It is often treated as the fourth state. Chaturtham Manyante. But it is not the state, it is the existence itself. It is called Turiyam. So that is the supreme reality, that is Sakshi. And the Veda says, Sa Atma, Sa Vidneya. that is to be known, know it. Savijnaya, know it. This is from the Mundaka Upanishad. It says, Yattad adreshyam agrashyam agotram avarnam achakshushotram tad apani padam nityam vibhum sarvagatam susukshmam tad avyayam yad bhuta yonim paripashyanti dhira. A person who is equipped with Dhi Shakti can see him everywhere. The first 5-6 epithets are the negative description of Brahman, which is not creation. Sarva Indriya Gocharam, ungraspable by the intellect, does not belong to any Gotra, does not belong to any Varna, not captured by Indriyas, beyond the grasp of the 5 senses. Achakshu, Ashrotram, Apanipadam, he doesn't have limbs. Then he goes to the positive description, Nityam, Vibhum, Sarvagatam, Susukshmam, Avyayam, Bhutayonim, Paripashyanti, Dhira. Emphasis on Dhi. This is also Mundaka Upanishad says, Sayo Havai Tat Paramam Brahma, Brahma Veda, Brahmaiva Bhavati. He says, he who comes to know the Supreme Brahman realizes that he himself is Brahman. And in his family, none remains ignorant. He crosses over sorrow, he crosses over sin, freed from the knots of the heart, he becomes immortal. I have quoted several of these things. I have quoted in part here just to indicate that the statements are from various Upanishads. Mandukya, Taittiriya, Mundaka, Kaivalya, Shvetashvatara, Katha, Brihadaranyaka, etc. And they say various things. See, Sa Atma Sa Vijneyaha. This is Mandukya. Brahma Vidapnoti Param. The one who achieves Brahman has achieved the Supreme. That's what Taittiriya says. Brahma Veda Brahmaiva Bhavati, Mundaka. Anando Brahmeti Vejanat, Taittiriya. Nanya Pantha Vimuktaye. Brahma Paramam Yati Nanyena Hetuna. Unless you see that Brahman, unless you realize Brahman, there is no other goal, says Kaivalya. Nanya Pantha Vidyate Ayanaya, says Shvetashvatara. Like this, it goes on, and I have collected these things just to impress you, to say that all the Upanishads converge on this point. I have given the full mantras so that if somebody wants to refer to it, they can refer here and then take off from here to the actual scripture. Brahma Vidapnoti Param. The knower of Brahman achieves the highest. In this regard, the Veda says Brahman is Satyam Jnanam Anantam. He resides in the subtle space. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyoman. He says, where do you seek this Brahman? The Veda says, seek him in your heart. He resides in your heart. The bottommost, the lowest substratum of your being is Sakshi. Seek him in your heart. Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam. Guha means heart. Parame Vyoman. There is a subtle space in your heart. That is where you should seek him. Once you know him, Soshnute Sarva Kaman Saha. All desires get fulfilled. Krishna says about this, Sarvata Samtodake in the Gita. If you are thirsty and you will seek water, you will go to a well with a pitcher and a rope. But if it floods everywhere, then you don't seek the well. You just take a mug and drink. So realization of Brahman means that all desires get fulfilled. Then you don't need a specific pursuit. You are not looking for security because there is nothing to be secure about. You are not seeking to extend your lineage because you are ever present, you are eternal. There is nothing more to know because you have become Jnanam himself. Notice that Brahman is described as Ananda, Brahman is described as Jnanam. In an ordinary reference, in a colloquial reference, we say somebody is knowledgeable, somebody is not knowledgeable. Knowledge is an external acquisition. But in the case of Brahman, it is not that way. It is not that Brahman possesses knowledge. Brahman is knowledge. Brahman is Ananda. Brahman is eternal. Therefore, when you realize that you are Brahman, you are knowledge itself. And that is why it says that there is no other goal. If you have to realize Jnanam, you have to become Jnani. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Jnanam, Jneyam, Jnanagamyam. He says, Jnanam is to be known. Three things he says. It is Jneyam, it is to be known. What? Jnanam. How? Through Jnana. And what does Dhi do? Dhi opens the door where you enter. But it says that there is no other go. See, it is, please understand this correctly. This is not similar to the Semitic paradigm where they say that I am the only way. It is not that. Here he says, see, you have several approaches to the Lord. If you are satisfied with what you get by those approaches, that is fine. That's what Krishna says. It is like, say the temple, there is a temple on the hillock, say like our Tirupati. And the temple has several paths to reach. You can go by road, you can go by stairs. I am sure there are many footpaths through which you can approach the temple in different directions from around the hill. But once you reach there will be queues. There will be a long queue and there will be a short queue. If you have purchased a special ticket, it will be a short queue. The queues will proceed, but at one point, the queues will merge. Just before the Sanctum Sanctorum, just before the Garbhagudi, all these queues will merge. And you enter Garbhagudi only through one door. It is in that sense the Veda says Nanya Pantha. Suppose you are satisfied just to go around and purchase the prasadam and return, that is fine. That is fine. But if you want to enter, you have to enter through this door. That is called Jnana. And what is Dhi? Dhi is that hole through which you enter. You enter, but when you enter as Jnana. And once you go inside, imagine that there is no Murti there. Venkatesha Murti is not there. What is there? There is Jnanam alone. Everything is Jnanam. You have entered, you have also become Jnanam. You have merged with that, and then you realize that you are Brahman. That is the kind of language which the Upanishad talks about. So Brahma Vidapnoti Param. You achieve the supreme is identity with Brahman. How? By dropping off Ajnana. The ignorance is dropped off. Sa eva sarvam yad bhutam yadcha bhavyam sanatanam. This is Kaivalya Upanishad. Sa eva sarvam. It's a very short statement, but it says Sa eva sarvam. He is everything. Yad bhutam yadcha bhavyam. The past and the future, present, everything included. It is He alone. So this is the first statement I was talking about. The entire creation at all times is Brahman. Jnatva tam mrityumatyeti nanya pantha vimuktaye. There is no other way for liberation. This is again Kaivalya Upanishad. Sarva bhutastham atmanam sarva bhutani chatmani sampashyan brahma paramam yati nanyena hetuna. And when you realize, he says, your state is this. Mayeva sakalam jatam, mayi sarvam pratishthitam. Mayi sarvam layam yati, tat brahma advayam asmi aham. The whole world emanates from me. Mayeva sakalam jatam. Mayi sarvam pratishthitam. It is sustained by me. Mayi sarvam layam yati, tat brahmadvayam asmi aham. This is said to be the final state of realization, the pinnacle of realization, where you have a complete identification with the Lord and you are completely liberated. There is no punarjanma as a being, because your existence, the being, is over. You may come back to the creation as Lord Krishna because you have identified yourself with him. That is a different issue. Krishna often comes down. He says, Name parthasti kartavyam trishu lokeshu kinchana. I have no duties, but I come for my pleasure. That way you have existence as Brahman, but as a jiva, it is over. This is called moksha. Then here it says, Tade tadhavyam vidhi. Know it. Tade tad vedavyam somya vidhi. This is on that which is self-luminous, subtler than the subtle, all the worlds and their inhabitants are supported. That is the imperishable absolute. Tadetad aksharam brahma. That manifests itself as life, speech and mind. That is truth. That is immortal. That is worth knowing. Therefore, my dear, meditate upon that and know it with thee. That is life. This is from Kathopanishad. By knowing that which is soundless, ashabdam, touchless, asparsham, formless, undecaying, tasteless, odorless, eternal, beginningless, endless, subtler than Mahat, and absolute, man is liberated from the jaws of death. Nachiketa asks, what is the secret of death? He says, this is the secret of death. You can overcome death. Yeah. This is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which says, it is a dialogue between Ushastha, the son of Chakra, Chakrayani Ushastha, and Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya is the guru, Ushastha is the Shishya. So Ushastha asks Yajnavalkya, please teach me how to realize. And the description is, Yat Sakshat Aparokshat Brahma Ya Atma Sarvantara. Sakshat means immediate. Aparokshat means direct. Direct and immediate. I have to realize. Brahma Ya Atma Sarvantara. And the Veda says, Yo Veda Nihitam Guhayam Parame Vyuman. Once you realize that, Sarva Kaman Saha, all desires get automatically fulfilled. This is on Buddhi, the emphasis on Dhi Shakti. This is Bhagavad Gita saying, Jnanam, Jneyam, Jnanagamyam. It's a knowledge, one thing to be known, that is Jneyam, to be realized through knowledge, residing in all hearts. Hridi Sarvasya Vishthitam. This is Gayatri Mantra. Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Occurs in the Rigveda. Endorsed by Bhagavad Gita. Gayatri Chantasamaha. Seeking to expand the intellect to the level of Dhi. These various Upanishads saying this. Paripashyanti Dhira, says Mundaka Upanishad. Kathopanishad. Drishyate Tvagraya Buddhya Sukshmaya Sukshmadarshibhi. Agra means sharp, Swagraya Buddhya. And this is Mandukya Upanishad. Vijneyam Sada Buddhai. Through the intellect. That is developed intellect. Through the Dhi. Jnanam Jneyam Cha. Vijneyam Sada Buddhai Prakirtitam. This is Amrita Bindu Upanishad, which is outside the circle of 10 Upanishads. The primary Upanishad. This is considered to be a minor Upanishad. He says, Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshay. It is the mind. Mind means buddhi, mind combination he is talking about. It is through this you can get liberation. It is an internal subjective vidya. So the development happens internally, provided you do meditation, you do tapasya. Mana eva manushyanam karanam bandhamokshay. If you let your mind loose, then it will meddle in the world, go after desires, prompt you to do karma, maybe good karma, maybe bad karma. And the karma bandhana continues. Therefore, it is responsible for your bandhana. And in the Gita, Krishna says, Uddhared atmanatmanam. Atman amava sadhayet. Atmaiva haptano atmano bandhu. Atmaiva ripuratmana. This is Mundaka Upanishad. Esho puratma. Esho anuratma. Chetasa veditavya. Chetasa veditavyo. Through the mind, chitta, chetasa, veditavyo. You will know it through the mind. Jnana prasadena vishuddha sattva. Jnana prasadena vishuddha sattva. So Veda advises you to prepare your mind through jnana. Jnana means jnanam is a generic term which means the knowledge of the Vedas as well as the knowledge of Brahman. But knowledge of Brahman is also known as Vijnanam. But jnana is right from the beginning to end, it covers the whole range. The intellectual knowledge also is called jnanam. That is the study of scriptures, study of the Veda is called jnana. If you study that, I mean, it is recommended that you have to study it from a well-known guru. I mean, Shrotriyam Brahmanishtam, a competent guru. And if you do that, Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana, you do from a competent guru for a length of time, your mind matures. It gets readied for the revelation of truth. That preparedness is created by jnana. So here the word used is jnana prasadena vishuddha sattva. Sattva improves by learning. There are 3 gunas in Prakriti. Sattva is closest to jnana. Tama is farthest to jnana. In the Gita he says, Sattva sanjayate jnanam. In order to get knowledge, spiritual knowledge, you have to remain in sattva. So lift yourself to sattvic state. Sattva sanjayate jnanam. Rajaso lobha evacha. If you are rajasic, if that is predominant, then you will go after desires. It is not only lobha. Kama, Krodha, Lobha, Moha, Mada, Matsara. There are 6 of them. Here he uses one word to indicate all the 6. Elsewhere he uses the word Kama and Krodha. Kama esha, Krodha esha, Rajoguna samudbhavaha. But here he says, Rajaso Lobha evacha. Pramada mohat tamaso. Bhavato ajnana evacha. He attributes 3 things for tamas. One is pramada. Pramada is error. Pramada mohat. Mohat is delusion. Then ajnanam. All the 3 attributes to tamas. So in order to improve yourself, prepare yourself for jnanam, you have to lift yourself from tamas to sattva. Reduce tamas, increase sattva. Control rajas. That happens by the study of Vedas. So it is Jnana Prasadena Vishuddha Sattva. Sattva is, it is prepared, the ground is prepared for Jnanam. Then upon that descends the knowledge. Tatastu tam pashyate nishkalam dhyayamanaha. Then you will be able to see the Nishkalam Brahma, the faultless Brahman, descends upon you. That's what it means. So this is Brihadaranyaka Upanishad and Kathopanishad both say this. Manasaivanudraštaivam, drashtavyam, neha nanasti kinchana. In no other way. Neha nanasti kinchana. I'll continue. He says, nothing other than the mind can lead you there. Manasaiva anudraštaivam, neha nanasti kinchana. Yeah, these are details. Of course, I've already said what is relevant. Drishyate tvagriyaya buddhya sukshmaya sukshmadarshibi. The self hidden in all beings and is invisible, but is seen by the seers of subtle and pointed intellect, capable of subtle perceptions. Tvagriya buddhya. Drishyate tvagriyaya buddhya. Sukshmaya sukshmadarshibi. Mandukya Karika. Vijneyam sada buddhai. This is Brihadaranyaka, this is Kathopanishad, where it asserts that it is through mind alone and nothing else that you will reach Brahman. This is Mundaka Upanishad. We have discussed this, so I'll skip. And I'll continue. So Jnana Prasadena Vishuddha Sattva. We have discussed this. So it is Buddhi Grahyam, says Bhagavad Gita. Sukham Atyantikam Yat Buddhi Grahyam Atindriyam Vetti Yatrana Chaivayam Sthitas Chalati Tattvataha. He says, when one's mind grasps the infinite bliss, Buddhigrahyam Atyantikam Sukham, which is beyond the senses, it is Atindriyam. Knowing that this is better than all else, knowing that he doesn't deviate from that truth. Na chalati tattvataha. He stays steady, connected, is called sthita prajna. Again, Bhagavad Gita asserts that Buddhi Yoga, to those who are ever steadfast, worshipping me with love, I give them the spiritual intelligence, that is Buddhi Yoga, by which they come to me. Mam upayanti te, they come to me. So the assertion of the Upanishad as well as the Bhagavad Gita here is that you have to develop your dhi, realize Brahman as a jnana swarupa. It is the nature of Brahman, as jnana is the nature of Brahman, Ananda is the nature of Brahman. He doesn't possess it as an external acquisition. He is Jnanam, he is Anandam, and he is ever present. He is Akala. It is intellectually difficult to comprehend this. In order to comprehend this, you have to develop what is known as Mahabuddhi, through which you enter. And when you enter, you yourself become Jnanam, you yourself become Brahman, which you have always been but unaware of. That is called realization. So that is the conclusion. The 6 points which I mentioned at the beginning are listed here again for the sake of reference. That is our conclusion. This is called Brahma Vidya. So I'll stop here. And if there are any questions or comments, I would like to hear. And we will take up one more session on this, in this line, that is Brahmanveshana. How do we actually perform this yoga? It is also known as Jnana Yoga. Thank you. If there are any questions, I would like to hear.
Sir, I had a question. Harinath, can I go ahead?
Yeah.
Yes, Nagi, please. Yes, Nagi.
Sir, my question was, as we all know, Vedas and Upanishads have been there for thousands of years now.
Yeah.
And in today's presentation also, 2-3 times you brought up when talking about Brahman, that it is non-dual Advaitam and all that. So I am also a follower of Advaita philosophy, but I was just wondering if the same Vedas and Upanishads, if there was someone from the Dvaita philosophy who don't believe in non-dualism but who believe in dualism, if they were to beam something out of the Vedas and Upanishads, and would their approach be different of how to realize the Brahman? Because ours is Brahman is everything. Their philosophy is different. Would that be different?
Yeah. Nagi, I am not competent to comment on this because I have not studied it in depth.
Okay.
Someone who has studied amongst us should make a presentation on that and say an alternate viewpoint. But I'll tell you this much. See, there are 6 darshanas. 6. Only one of them says this.
Okay.
The Advaita is presented by only the Vedanta philosophy of Badarayana, Vedanta Sutras of Badarayana. It is known as Brahma Sutras also known as Vedanta Sutras. Badarayana means Veda Vyasa. There are other 5 darshanas which don't say that.
Okay.
That is one thing. And there are 3 matas. That is Advaita, Vishishtadvaita and Dvaita.
Dvaita, yeah.
They essentially differ in the final state of the being. From what I understand in Dvaita is that they talk about moksha. Yes, mukti is said. But mukti is staying with the Lord. But not identification with the Lord.
Okay.
They stay on with the Lord till eternity. That's what mukti is.
Okay.
There are other differences. There are quite a few other differences with the Dvaita. But Vishishtadvaita is very close to Advaita. But the final state is slightly different. What is described is different. So is it with Buddhism. Buddhism, I don't know what Buddha really had perceived. I do not know. But later on, Buddha's philosophy was expounded by other philosophers, notably Nagarjuna. Nagarjuna talks about Shunya. And the Vedanta would say the Shunya is a pre-final stage. Perception of Shunya. As you meditate, a stage comes when the mind becomes blank. That is called Shunya. Entire thing you see blank. So Nagarjuna talks about Shunyavada. But Vedanta would say that at that time, who is perceiving the Shunya? In the meditation, you should ask this question, who is seeing the Shunya?
Okay.
Then the attention gets directed towards the Sakshi who is watching it. It is then the final release occurs. That's what Vedanta says.
Okay.
So these opinions differ, because especially because this is such an abstract thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it can be dismissed as conjecture. For example, I have not learned this by experience. I am only collecting things from various places and what logically seems to be a coherent thesis. So I have put it together. So one can easily dismiss this. It is just an abstraction. So I think so. If you think so, you think so. Which is the freedom which Vedanta gives, which Sri Krishna gives. He says, I have told you the truth, but you make your own decision. See, this is the most beautiful aspect of our philosophy. Vedas have no quarrel with any other interpretation, which it may consider as erroneous, but it allows you to continue with that. But says that this is the final thing, and unless you do this, you have no other go, Nanya Pantha, and leaves it at that. It doesn't compel people to follow this. It doesn't take that stand at all. And in fact, takes the stand in the opposite direction. It says that, okay, if you want to know this, you need to have proper preparation. Are you ready? Are you mentally ready? Do you have the will to pursue it? Do you have the aspiration? Which we will see in the next session. It is called mumukshutva. Mumukshutva means aspiration. But mumukshutva alone will not deliver, they say. It is a very important aspect that if you have an aspiration, then you acquire other things. But you need to acquire other things. It says Vairagya and Mumukshutva together can lift you up. But then you need Shraddha. You need patience, Titiksha. All these things are required. But to lift at the two ends, one end it says Vairagya, other end it says Mumukshutva. Together it can acquire other qualities and then lift you up. But it is a voluntary decision one has to make that I do require this. I do need to pursue this. If you say that I don't want this, it is fine. It is like saying go to Tirupati, buy your laddu and come back without entering the sanctum sanctorum, it is fine. That's what the position of Vedanta is. Advaita Vedanta. Yeah. Because the same Vedanta is interpreted by other viewpoints of Advaita as well as Vishishtadvaita interprets the same Vedanta. And they too accept that this is Veda is the ultimate reference.
So, sir, actually in Jignasa group, there is a person called Nikhil Raghavendra Rao.
Yeah.
He's a big Dvaita like fan. So maybe we can request one talk from him. Sir. I'll request him.
Yeah. It would be good to have that presentation on a different.
He is also very logical and is a very strong supporter of Dvaita. So let us understand his viewpoints.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Nagi, done?
Yeah, done. I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, next question from Varshit.
Yes. Namaste, sir. Varshit here. Yeah. So, if the purpose of life is this ultimate realization of Brahman, I am Brahman and everything else is Brahman.
Yeah.
So then what is the purpose of Brahman to create all of this? Or what is the purpose of creation itself?
Yeah. Actually, I don't know. You need to reach that stage to realize that. In fact, I too had asked this question some 38 years ago as a student to Swami Ranganathananji. Why did you do this? But he said, you will know it when you reach there. And I have not yet reached there, so I cannot answer that question. But what is said is that the Brahman was alone See, you should not think that it is in the time scale. It is not that at some point in time that he has done this, because Brahman has no sense of time. But in the Gita, he says that the creation and Brahman are anadi. It is ever present. We are talking about the time scale, which is our perception. We are living in a world where time is relevant for us. So he says that it is anadi. Okay. Why did Brahman create? The answer Vedanta gives is it is lila. It is just a playfulness. And how did he create? By sankalpa matrena. By an inner decision. Sankalpa matrena. So he has created this Brahman, put a rule there and allowed Prakriti to take over. Prakriti runs suyate sacharacharam. Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharacharam. Under my chairmanship, Prakriti runs it. And I don't get involved in a day-to-day running of the universe. But I am watchful. Nothing escapes my attention. This is what the Bhagavad Gita says. This is what the Veda says. It is a Leela. The word used is Leela. Leela means beauty, beautiful, playfulness. Leela means playfulness. Lalitya means beauty.
Okay, thank you, sir.
So what happens is that we trying to understand from our perspective, that is Jiva's perspective. Brahman has a different perspective. Two different perspectives. So when you become Brahman, then what we normally question is that why there is so much of suffering in the world. That is Jiva's perspective. Why is so much of suffering? From Brahman's perspective, it is not suffering at all. It is just a game. Nothing happens to you. Because you are Brahman himself. Except that the Jiva is ignorant, there is no difference between Brahman and Jiva. Because the entire world is Brahman. That's what the Advaitic philosophy says. So Brahman's perspective, to gain that perspective, we need to reach there. So we don't know otherwise. What is said is that it is Leela. Ekoham bhusyam. I am one, I become many. That is his decision. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. One other question.
Yeah.
So can I say that this creation is a expression of existence of Brahman? So that is a grand play that is being played, and even the laws of physics are also part of laws of karma.
Laws of physics. See, there may be several facets to the law of Prakriti. I do not know whether law of physics can be equated to the law of karma. I do not know. I don't know how to. But it is run according to the law of Prakriti. Avasham Prakritir Vashat. Everything is under control of Prakriti. Prakriti is run according to law. It is not arbitrary. So the suffering and other things that happen is because of one's own karma. One's own karma. There are sufferings which can be overcome if it is a sattvic karma. If it is rajasic, with effort you can overcome. But if it is tamasic, you may not be able to overcome. You may have to suffer it in its entirety because it was the manifestation of past karma. That's what the description of karma is. I don't know whether it can be treated as law of physics.
Yeah. So law of karma deals with the beings, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So can I say law of karma is a part of law of Prakriti itself?
Yes.
And there are laws of physics is other part of law of Prakriti.
Yeah. There may be several other laws. But the most important law that governs the evolution of being is karma. So in Vedanta, I would rather discuss karma, not physics, in that sense. Because physics deals with the material interaction, inanimate objects, their interaction, the physics deals with. Whereas karma deals with the animate, conscious jivas. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question from Anand.
Hello. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello.
Anand, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, two questions. One is related to the previous answer that you gave about creation. The concept of Leela, wouldn't it fall kind of under Dvaita, this thing? Because I thought in pure Advaita, really this Leela, or like you said, Brahma was alone, and that really doesn't exist, right? Because Brahman is only. So I thought that this Leela and all would probably be more like Dvaita.
I am not able to see your point.
No, I mean, my point was that basically, so the explanation to the creation, like as the Leela, that is usually used by the Dvaita, what do we say, Dvaita Pratipadaks, but pure Advaita would not put it that way. Basically, there is no answer why there is creation. That's what my understanding was in Advaita.
Advaita says this. See, Advaita says, looks at creation as dependent reality.
Yeah.
See, there are two realities, both are anadi, but one is the master, another is dependent. In Advaita, they say that Maya or Prakriti is dependent on Brahma.
Mm.
It is a manifestation of Brahma's power, Shakti. That is the word used, Shakti. It is dynamic, it is ever changing, whereas Brahman is unchanging. But Brahman can intervene in creation. Mayadhyakshena prakritihi suyate sacharachara. Brahman is sitting there, watchful, he can intervene. He doesn't intervene when Prakriti is running it just like that. He doesn't intervene just like that, arbitrarily. But if the jivas appeal to him and he feels convinced about it, then he intervenes. He says that I respond to the call. Ye bhajanti tu mam bhaktya maite teshu chapyaham. If they call me, I intervene. And if you surrender to me, I'll take care of you. If you say that I do not have anything to do with you, I will not disturb you. Then the Prakriti will take over. The law will take over. Your own karma will take over. I will not intervene. But the Lord can intervene. That's what Advaita is. Lord can intervene. He is Ishvara. See, Brahman is Brahman, but what you are referring to is Ishvara. When he creates creation, he is attached to the creation. He looks towards creation. In that sense, he is Ishvara. He is the master. The word Ishvara means master. So he can intervene. That is why we pray. We pray so that he can intervene and alleviate our karma. That is why we pray. And we use all kinds of hyperboles and other things while praying. All the stotras you look at, there's so much of, it looks so flattering. Hoping that he will get flattered and by which he will condone some of our karma. This is what our hope is. But he may choose to intervene where he thinks it is necessary. But that is part of Advaita only. So, Dvaita would say that both realities are independent. That is the Brahman, that is the Lord, as well as creation, both are two realities. Whereas Advaita says there is only one reality, the other one is a manifestation of that reality. Probably we should leave it like Buddha said. Buddha in his teachings did not get into these details. When somebody asked him, why don't you tell me what happens, how the world is created and what happens at the end of the creation and all that, he said, don't worry about that, you will know when you reach there. So at some point of time we have to say that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Maybe I'll get back. I'll take. Yeah. Another question is more like a historical thing. This is a question I always had. So, like in the recent past, right? If you look at the commentaries on Brahma Sutras or Upanishads, obviously those are of Shankaracharya's. Or if you go a little bit above his guru, I forget Gaudapad or Govinda. I mean, maybe a couple of generations above him, right? But if going back to the original Brahma Sutra, which I don't know what date you would ascribe, but whatever it is, it's several hundreds of years before, if not thousands, right? Some say it's thousands, some say it's hundred. But then there is this gap between where Brahma Sutras were written and then you have the commentaries of the lineage of Shankaracharya. So what happened in that period in between is always I wondered, like, were they just maintained as a oral tradition which we just don't have any access to, or just wanted to get your perspective on that?
Yeah. I have a limited perspective on that, but I will try to answer this. See, commentaries on Brahma Sutras are written not only by Shankara but by others also. I think Madhvacharya also has written commentaries on that. Bhagavad Gita Madhvacharya is certainly written on that.
But that will come later, right? That's after Shankaracharya.
About 800 years before.
Right.
Yeah, before that Shankaracharya wrote. But Shankaracharya, in between maybe Vedavyasa and Shankaracharya, there were several teachers who have written also. Shankara himself mentions that there were 99 commentaries. So it is not vacant. But what might have happened is that Shankara is extremely brilliant. His enunciation, understanding, as well as expression, the lucidity with which he wrote is exceptional. And because of which, after Shankara, whoever wrote on Advaita started referring to Shankara only and not earlier. And even you look at Gaudapada's Mandukya Karika, that is 2 generations earlier to Shankara. Only Mandukya Karika, his speciality is that he wrote commentaries on Mandukya Upanishad. That is, there are 12 mantras in that Upanishad, and Gaudapada Acharya wrote 4 chapters on that. Each chapter is more than 40 verses. They are called Karikas. You see, he took the mantra that I have quoted. In that, there are words like Prapanchopashamam. Gaudapada Acharya wrote one full chapter of 40 plus verses on this one word. It is called Vaitatya Prakaranam. And he also wrote another chapter on the word Advaitam. In one verse, 2 words were expanded into 2 chapters. Yeah, but the other commentaries that did not become that popular. Everybody started referring to Shankara, and once the lucidity is of a level that you don't require any other commentaries. That is the. But there were acharyas, yes. And post Shankara also there were acharyas.
Right. Okay. I have one more question, just again related to history and this one, like. Advaita philosophy, according to you, so if you look at, I'm just trying to go back to our Indian kind of iconography, temples and these things, right? Around that period, like we know Guptas and before that Vakatakas. Now that philosophy is more according to Shaiva, maybe we can put Vaishnav and that kind of thing. So as far as Advaita philosophy is concerned, are you aware of any kind of iconography or other than just intellectual these discourses, how it was expressed in Indian this thing, other than